Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Vegan Spirituality Online Gathering with your host. My name is Lisa Levinson. I'm the director of In Defense of Animals Sustainable Activism Campaign, which offers emotional and spiritual resources for animal activists. My co-host is Judy Carmen, who you can also see if you're online. We're so excited to have her beautiful face with us today. And we have our guest speaker, who is Keith Akers. He's also one of the faces you see if you're online. And we'll go through and do some introductions first before we get started. Again, thanks so much for joining us. This is a real treat to have you all here. This vegan spirituality call is an opportunity to explore veganism as a spiritual practice. We've been doing this together for about a year online, but we also have some in-person meetings which meet across the country. And if you want to find out if there's a local vegan spirituality meetup near you, you can do that on veganspirituality.com. There's a tab that says groups, and you'll see all sorts of groups across the country, from Atlanta, Georgia, to Tustin, California, to Denver, Colorado, and all points in between. So hopefully you can meet some fellow spiritual vegans in person. And we started this online gathering so that we could reach folks who either didn't have access to those meetings or preferred an online platform. So that's what we're here to do, is to share this community with you. And so why don't we go ahead and, a couple little announcements. Part of our Sustainable Activism campaign, we also have regular events and retreats. Our next online event is an animal activist support group, which will be on the 28th, the same time, and we'll be featuring a life coach who will assist all of our activist friends with any issues going on in their lives and also help them with improving their activism. And some good news, we just found out we'll be having a vegan spirituality retreat in the Florida area that will be hosted by the group in Tallahassee, Florida. So if you're in the area, we hope that you can join us. We'll be sharing more information, and I posted the events page, idausa.org events, where we'll share more details about the Florida retreat, which will happen in March. I believe it's March 12th or 13th, so I'll double check that. So anyway, without any further ado, we'll get started with our program. Judy, why don't you introduce yourself, and then we can also introduce Keith.
I will be glad to. Thank you, Lisa. And welcome, everybody. We're so glad you're with us. And this is going to be a great evening. I have known Keith for a long time and read his books over and over. They're amazing. He has written a vegetarian source book, which has been around a long time, and a Bible for a lot of people. The Lost Religion of Jesus, which was published by Lantern Books in 2000 and has also been a really important book for everybody who is interested in this topic. Keith has done research that is so deep and so thorough that I just want everybody to read that book, and also his Disciples, which came out not too long ago. He's been speaking and writing about vegetarianism and veganism for 3 decades. So he's also been active in local groups for decades, having served as president of the Vegetarian Society of D.C. and also of Colorado, the Vegetarian Society of Colorado, the whole state, right, Keith? And
right.
His blog is CompassionateSpirit.com. I highly recommend that you go there. His partner, Kate Lawrence, also posts on there some fascinating information there. He's currently an organizer of the Denver Vegan Meetup and is working on a book relating veganism and the environment. So, Keith, welcome. We're so fortunate that you have joined us, and I know everybody's going to be really excited that they listened in. And by the way, everybody, towards the end, if you do have questions, Lisa, do you want to explain how they can ask a question or write a note?
Yes, I will do that. And for those of you who are new to our online programming, I handle the tech side of things. So what I'll be doing is monitoring the chat box. So if you have a question, you can always type it in there if you're online. And if you're on the phone later in the call, we'll do an interview first with Keith, and then after that, we'll open it up for a big Q&A with everyone who's on the phone and online with us. And later, you'll be able to unmute yourself by pressing *6. And meanwhile, if you'd like to chat with each other or with us, you can do so in the chat box. Thanks, Judy.
Okay, so let's just get right to Keith. I know everyone's anxious to hear from you, Keith. I've been watching your Compassionate Spirit website. It's so informative. I know that, as I mentioned, Kate Lawrence, your partner, who is author of Practical Peacemaker, is also on the website. And so I wanted to know if you could tell everybody what some of your and Kate's goals are for the website and the work that you're doing.
Well, my goals are, at this time, first of all, to finish my book on veganism and the environment, which I've been working on for some time. And the second is to continue my blog and to make contact with all the readers. I'm trying to focus just specifically on those two things right now. Kate's also interested in community outreach and simple living issues, so we're both sort of in the same interest area there. My book is tentatively titled "Embracing Limits: An Informal Guide to the End of Industrial Civilization." I think this is an important thing, and it does really relate back to the spiritual issues too, because I think that what we need to do is we have to get the whole world sort of on this track to be a more spiritually oriented in the sense of simple living, nonviolence, and veganism. I think that veganism is an important part of it, but I think that there's more to it as well.
Yeah, veganism is a very important part of simple living, I think. Yeah, and a beautiful part. So I've read your books, as I mentioned, and I'm so intrigued by all the research you did. How long did it take you to research the lost religion of Jesus?
Well, I don't devote a period of time just to this book and then I led up to it. But I mean, the quick answer is, well, I was working on it for about 20 years. Then I wrote a book. Then I worked on it for another 10 years, and then I wrote another book. I wasn't working on it solid during that time, but it was my primary focus of energy. As soon as I wrote a vegetarian source book, as you'll recall, there's a chapter on Christianity in there, that I realized that there was a major problem with Christianity in terms of vegetarianism and veganism, and that is that it didn't seem to be vegetarianism seemed to be rejected by Christianity. How can we make sense of this? And so, as I started to research it, my first impulse was just to say, well, Christianity and vegetarianism, they're incompatible. You can't make it work together. But, as I got farther into the history, I realized that actually in original Christianity, there was an interest in vegetarianism. And in fact, this is the issue which split the church, and the letters of Paul discuss. These are the very first Christian documents that we have, the letters of Paul. And Paul relates a controversy over vegetarianism in that, which basically splits Paul from the other disciples. It's like, what is going on with this? So that one thing led to another, and 20 years later, I published The Lost Religion of Jesus. And then 10 years after that, Disciples.
So, and you went back in time in your research and looked at where Jesus and his family might have come from as far as their belief system and their feelings about animal sacrifice. So they were a separate sect from some of the Jewish people. Is that right?
Well, how shall I put this? They did have their own sect. It was a Jewish sect, and as best we can tell, the original name of it was the Nazareans. And this sounds very suspiciously like Nazarenes, but if you look at the New Testament, if you look at the Greek, you see that Nazarene is spelled slightly different. And a lot of people said, well, it's just a spelling mistake. They didn't know how to spell Nazarene back then, so they made something up, and there it is. Well, the problem is that the same spelling mistake occurs in all four Gospels and in the book of Acts. So I think that they intended for it to mean something other than simply a resident of Nazareth. I think that it had reference to something in their teachings. Different people have suggested what it might be. One is that it's a reference to Nezer, which is from Isaiah 11:1. A branch shall come from the root of Jesse, and so forth and so on, in Isaiah 11:1. And it's sort of a reference to that. It's a reference to Isaiah. There are some other ideas also. Hans Joachim Schurp says that it refers to those who have hidden teachings. That there was some sort of secret teaching in there. Mm-hmm. And this is the thing that I run into, that often you can see the general contours of the history of Christianity, but you can't know everything. There's some things you just say, well, I don't know. It could be this, it could be that. And there's some things that we're more sure of. We're pretty sure, I know that Jesus was very much against animal sacrifice, and that he was taught vegetarianism. But the other stuff, exactly why or exactly how, we don't know. We think it's his own sect. It probably was related to the Essenes, but it wasn't in a group of Essenes. And again, I'm speculating here. If you want to know the whole story, read The Lost Religion of Jesus or read Disciples, and you can get all the various permutations. But I think that the early Christians regarded the Essenes as a little too much of a recluse. Pliny, who's a Roman guy who talks about the Essenes, he says they have only palm trees for company. So they kept for themselves. And in Philo, you also see the impression that the Essenes are a very reclusive sect. They sell everything. They go out into the wilderness, and they live alone by themselves. They don't interact with society. Whereas I think that Jesus and John the Baptist were more of, we've got to take this message to the people. That's the kind of thing that they were more interested in saying. So I think that it was had some of the Essene ideas, but was not an Essene group as such. And I think that going further back, that it connects with Pythagoras and the Pythagoreans. That there was a big upsurge of Neo-Pythagoreanism just around the time, about a century before Jesus, and continuing through. So you can push it forward in several different directions.
Isn't there pretty good evidence that Jesus' brother was vegan, that he wouldn't wear leather or eat any flesh?
Well,
in the
yes,
Bible itself?
It's not in the Bible. It's in the ecclesiastical history. Eusebius wrote a history of the early church, and in there he says James, the brother of Jesus, was holy from his mother's womb. He would not eat flesh. He would not eat wine, and there's a bunch of other things that he also did. Didn't cut his hair. That's another sort of odd thing that nobody knows quite what to make of it. So he's the original hippie, I guess. But he was raised. He was holy from his mother's womb, meaning he was raised this way. He was raised as a vegetarian. And here's another critical piece of evidence that Jesus himself was vegetarian. Why would Jesus' parents say, okay, well, we're going to raise James as a vegetarian, but Jesus, you can do anything you want? I mean, how likely do you think this is? No, if he was raised as a vegetarian, it was probably because Jesus' parents were vegetarian themselves, and they had one teaching for the entire family. And another thing that Eusebius says, and this would point towards veganism, is that James would not wear wool. So he would only wear linen garments. And this is the only reference to an animal product other than meat that we really see in the history of Jewish Christianity, which is what I call the movement around Jesus. Because this movement continued. It didn't just die out after Jesus. It continued for several hundred years afterwards. And this is the Ebionites, the Jewish Christians, continued their beliefs, and they pretty much kept to the, maybe they probably elaborated on it a fair amount, but they pretty much kept to the original ideas. They were vegetarian. They taught vegetarianism. They said vegetarianism, it's required. It's part of the gospel, essentially. Mm-hmm. Now, in ancient times, I could get started here, but in ancient times, most people were vegans most of the time out of necessity, just because that's all there was. You would eat wheat, and you might, if you were lucky, you get some lentils and maybe a vegetable or two. But meat was just for the 1%. The meat or fish, it was just for the 1% of the people at the very top. So most people were vegans most of the time, except at festival time, whenever you would have an animal sacrifice and it might be distributed to the people, then you would have some meat eating. And that's why Jesus is very concerned, and the early Christian movement is very concerned about animal sacrifice, because they don't want to let you sneak meat in on the side like this.
I've heard some animal activists talk about Jesus actually being one of the first animal liberators because of what he did in the temple to stop the animal sacrifice.
Yes, exactly. And let's see, we can read from the scripture here. Let's see. This is from the second chapter of John. John actually puts the incident in the temple at a different place than most of the other gospel writers, but the description of the incident itself is the most complete, in my opinion. This is what he says. The Passover of the Jews was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the temple he found those who were selling oxen and sheep and pigeons, and the money changers at their business. And making a whip of cords, he drove them all with the sheep and oxen out of the temple. And he poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. And he told those who sold the pigeons, "Take these things away. You shall not make my Father's house a house of trade." So you can see that first of all, that the primary target of Jesus' anger is towards the dealers in animals. In fact, if you look at all of the 4 of the gospel gospel accounts, this is one of the few incidents that's in all four gospels, and in none of them are the money changers at the top of the list. It's always the dealers in animals. Then you've got the money changers sort of as an afterthought. In fact, in Luke, money changers aren't even mentioned. He's just going in and disrupting, what he's doing is disrupting the animal sacrifice business. The animal sacrifice business was a big business in ancient Jerusalem. There was a lot of money coming in. They had to import animals from outside of the immediate area. It was not just a local little thing where you would go out to the farmer and buy a cow or something. They had to bring animals in from everywhere. It was really the center of the Jerusalem economy at that time. So Jesus was doing a lot more than just making a symbolic gestures. I think a lot of scholars would like to turn this into some sort of, it was some sort of symbolic thing. He was unhappy with this or that. He was unhappy with the animal sacrifice business. He was unhappy with what was actually going on in the temple. Mm-hmm. And so the first thing he does is drive out the animals. And that's what got him killed, because it was after this point that he's arrested, tried, and executed. Right. Yeah. So that's what got you. You didn't disrupt. The Romans were very sensitive to issues of public order. They didn't really care about theology. They weren't going to. I mean, the Jews themselves, were very different from Roman paganism to begin with, and they were willing to go with that. But what they couldn't tolerate was a disruption of public order. During this time, during the Passover season, riots could easily break out in Jerusalem. And Josephus relates another instance where a Roman soldier during Passover makes an obscene gesture towards the crowd, and riots break down. And it takes days to deal with the situation. And so that's what they were trying to avoid. And so when they came in, they saw, who's causing the trouble in here? It's Jesus. Crucify him. Get him out of here. Yeah. And that's probably exactly how it happened.
Similar to animal activism today in some cases, where we are just told to get out and get away and not speak up for the animals. So how has this, Keith, all this research affected your spiritual path, and how do you put your veganism together with your spiritual path?
Well, that's a good question. I've tried to get involved with various groups, but mostly Christian and Buddhist. I haven't had a lot of luck with that. I have been able to find other vegans, though. And so the kind of interest, now if you go to church, say, and you say, well, I'd like to join your church, well, they expect a certain amount of commitment. They want you to show up. I mean, it's more than just showing up on Sunday. It's like they want, real members. They want people who will give them money. So you are expected to tithe, maybe show up to the committee meeting or help clean up or whatever. That's the kind of commitment that most of us as vegans would associate with your friendly local vegan group. And so, and even in fact, it's even down to the ritual meal. You've got the same thing in your vegan group. So you have got most of the elements that you would want in a church are already present in the vegan community, although no one sees it as a religious thing. In fact, you'll find vegans become sort of indignant, and they will say, "This isn't like a religion or anything, it's just and then they'll go on to what they think veganism really is. Well, actually, it's sort of like a religion when you think about it, or it's like a spiritual commitment. So it's very hard to be in two groups at the same time. I found it very difficult. I tried various, there were several New Thought churches that I was involved with. And as you know, Kate actually worked for Unity for 10 years. And when I met her, she was still working there. And so we were in Unity Church of Denver for a while. We were in First Divine Science for a while. And the problem is that while they would accept you, there was always this thing about veganism and vegetarian, or even vegetarianism, that they didn't really. They said, "Well, okay, fine, you're vegetarian. Everybody's a little weird these days, and you're okay." So they would accept you, but it wasn't like this is not something that they felt was part of the message. Now, in the Buddhist communities. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Keith, even though the Fillmores who founded Unity were vegan themselves.
Yes, isn't that ironic?
More interesting.
Isn't that ironic? And the thing is, and Will Tuttle has done a great deal of research on this, and he went back and he went to the early teens and the 20s and dug up all these wonderful quotes of all this. That every week they would say something about vegetarianism, but then after the Fillmores died, they said, "Well, that's it. We don't have to be vegetarian anymore," and that was pretty much the end of it. And so today, if you go into Unity, they say, "Oh, really? The Fillmores were vegan, vegetarian? Where are you getting this?" As if they've never heard of it before, and a lot of them haven't. It's the same thing with, in a way, it's sort of like what happened with the SDAs, with the Seventh-day Adventists, that originally Ellen White was vegetarian just sort of for health or ritual reasons or some sort of odd ideas. But then late in her life, she sort of had a revelation. She says, "No, this is wrong. It's wrong to kill animals for food." But, of course, by that time, the Seventh-day Adventists were already sort of set up in their beliefs, and so it didn't really do anything. Now, the Buddha, I've also been to a couple of, at least 3 different Buddhist groups. The Thich Nhat Hanh people, we were in a Thich Nhat Hanh meditation group. In fact, Kate started such a group, although she's not running it anymore. But Thich Nhat Hanh is the one Buddhist leader who's clearly vegetarian, requires veganism of their monks and so forth and so on, and who speaks about it. Then they have sort of a relaxed attitude towards meditation and things like that. So I do try to meditate once a day. And another group which was very helpful in terms of meditation was the Zen Center of Denver. They're a lot stricter than the Thich Nhat Hanh people, and they say, and though they have like services, they have like several times a week. I went to one of their things which lasted a week, where you do nothing but meditate for an entire week, like 8 hours, 10 hours a day, something like that. It was interesting. And then also, let's see, then there was an open circle group, which was sort of in between the Zen Center of Denver and the Thich Nhat Hanh people. It was sort of, it was small, informal group. So I've been exposed to, but the thing is with Buddhism, you've got the same problem as with Christianity, only not quite as bad, because there you will encounter actual Buddhists who are actually vegetarians or vegans even. But again, they have sort of a peculiar attitude towards it. It's like, well, yeah, sure, you can be vegetarian, but we're not going to really insist on it. It's like they don't really want to make it part of their message when actually actually it is part of their message. It's like the first precept, not to take the life of any sentient creature, not to harm any sentient creature. And so it's a vegan precept right from the get-go. And then you have this later split between the Mahayana and the Theravada. And part of what it was over was, there I am. Part of what this whole dispute was over vegetarianism. There's a lot more emphasis on vegetarianism in Mahayana than in Theravada. And you've got also modern people such as Roshi Philip Kapleau, who actually is the spiritual ancestor, if you would put it that way, spiritual ancestor of the Zen Center of Denver, who's a very strong vegetarian, I think vegan, or he was. He's passed on now, but he wrote a book. It has two titles, one in Britain and one in the United States, and I forget which is which, but one of the titles is To Cherish All Life, and the other one is, I believe, A Buddhist Case for Vegetarianism or something like that. But anyway, and he attacks what he sees as the hypocrisy of other Buddhist leaders who don't want to take on something like the first precept. So
yeah, and I just want to I want to mention one thing just about that, because for those of you who don't know, there's a group called Dharma Voices for Animals, and it's run by Bob Isaacson, and their mission is to educate people who are Buddhists from within the Buddhist community, and they've gathered Buddhists from around the world who have signed on to veganism and vegetarianism. And so that's a huge effort from within the Buddhist community to kind of work towards engaging the first precept again and reminding the community about the importance of that and in Buddha's message.
Yes, and they've got an excellent little movie out. I'm not sure if it's in its final form, but I've seen the current version. It's very nice, where they basically talk about all the issues that I and others have been talking about.
Right. The resistance to the message in all walks of life is so dramatic, and when it's even in, like you're talking about, Keith, in the religious circles, it's hard. It's hard, I think, to be vegan and balance that with our spirituality, because so many churches that we try to go to, or temples or whatever, reject the notion that veganism is a spiritual path and so incredibly intertwined with our spirituality. So, but how do you personally bring those together? Why is veganism important to your spirituality?
To me, it is my spirituality. It's like that's why I'm vegan, sort of. I mean, I would probably be vegan for health reasons, or perhaps even for environmental reasons also. But I think that's part of it. I don't really see this hard delineation between ethics and spirituality. I think that they both encompass each other. I think there's a lot of people who are probably more spiritual than they realize, if they would just stop and think about it.
I like
that.
Thanks
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I found when we started this group or movement of vegan spirituality. That's what many people said to us, is that, well, veganism is my religion. It is my spiritual practice. And so that's why we wanted to join together to create an opportunity to really discuss who we are and what we believe. And I think you're sharing that connection between our spiritual self and ethics. they are really woven together, a fabric that really kind of comforts us and holds us, and also creates a continuum for us to connect.
I'd also mention the Christian Vegetarian Association, which also exists, and they have pamphlets and stuff.
Right.
And I'm on their mailing list. Frank and Mary Hoffman, I think, are two of the people that I know that are involved with it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Keith. Also, one of our callers right now, Suzanne, had mentioned that as well, that they produce pamphlets, and they're activists also, the folks with that Christian Vegetarian Association.
Yeah, they have a really nice pamphlet to hand out at Christian concerts and that sort of venue. So Keith, there may be some people on the call. I'm wondering, people might write down some questions on the note thing, right, Lisa?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, if anyone has questions, you can certainly post them in the chat box, and then in a few minutes we'll open it up for questions that you can ask yourselves. That will in a few minutes.
I'm thinking one question might be, certainly for all of us from one time to another, is how do we talk to people who are so invested in kindness and compassion but cannot make that leap to animals, and almost feel like you are being against God or something if you are wanting to be compassionate to animals. I know it's a big challenge for a lot of us. So what experiences have you had, or ideas that you have about how to deal with that, and not just how to respond, but also how to handle it emotionally? Because it can be, especially at that spiritual level, you're at church and you really want to be part of this group, and they totally reject what you're saying about animals. It's hard emotionally also.
Yes, I would say two things. First of all, you need a community of some sort. It could be like just your friends, or it could be your local vegan meetup. In an ideal world, you could go down to the local, your local church or temple or whatever, and they would already be vegan, and you could just join them. But that's not going to happen right away. But talking to people about religion is hard. Everybody's different, and there's no blanket way of dealing with everything, and so you just have to handle it pretty much on a case by case. I haven't really come up with the magic solution to address people about how do you deal with someone who's all feelings of compassion and love for everything, even other animals other than the animals that they're eating, but just don't get the animal connection, and it just takes time. You sort of have to filter through your mind. You have to sort of like think about it for a while, because like the usual way you process information is if there's a practice that everyone is doing, and yum, it tastes good, and you need it too. It's good for you. And your parents believe this way, and everybody around you believes this way, and people that are sort of ethical believe this way. But, they're meat eaters. How do you handle that? It's very hard, because you're basically coming up against a problem that's a problem for civilization. The whole way, our whole approach to nature and the environment is just a little off. It's something to use. It's something to to gobble up, and there's no limits to what humans can do. And so that now we've got a crisis on a whole bunch of levels. We've got a crisis just in terms of environmental resources, in terms of the atmosphere, and so forth and so on, because of this basic attitude towards nature. So it's a problem that goes beyond just talking about religion or spirituality too. It's just a general problem with how do we deal with a civilization that's gone slightly off the rails. In fact, it's gone completely off the rails. And how do you point this out? It says, oh look, that's where we should be going, and that's where we're actually going. Is there a problem? I mean, how do you point this out to people?
Yeah, that's very hard.
We're having just a couple of questions in the chat box, so I wondered if you might want to address them. One was just to clarify how Jesus became vegan, if he was raised that way, or maybe his brother was, but he wasn't. So there was some question about, what was the genesis of that?
I believe that vegetarianism, first of all, I want to say a word about veganism, that the modern term veganism does not really exist in the ancient world. You had people who were Pythagoreans, or you had people who did not eat animals, and they didn't eat animals for ethical reasons. But there was no concept of not using animals, because animals were everywhere. You wanted to get somewhere, you were going to have to use an animal. You're going to have to use a donkey or a mule. As you're going to get any work done in the fields, you'd probably need an animal. And so asking about, well, was your mule well treated? I mean, that would be sort of the level of thing of discourse that you would have to, if you were going to go back in time and say, okay, we're going to figure out, whether Jesus was really vegan. You'd have to go back in time and interrogate the disciples, about, well, do you treat your animals well or something like that? Because you have to use animals in the ancient world. It's everywhere. And it's only with the advent of fossil fuels, ironically, that we get to the point where we don't have to use animals for labor or for transportation anymore. And so, but now, of course, we've got a problem with fossil fuels too. So where are you going to stop? So this is why I'm not really pushing the purity angle of the of veganism. Although I obviously today we don't need to do this. But so whether I think Jesus was would have been classified as vegan if we had the concept back then, and if it had been modified to mean something other than being as nice as we possibly can to animals, not eating them, and so forth. So I think that Jesus was he was raised as a vegetarian. I think the whole sect that he was part of, the Nazareans, was a vegetarian vegan group that taught vegetarianism as part of its ethical principles. And you can say, well, how is that different from what anybody else was? Well, the first difference is festival time. Festival time, Passover lamb, or in the pagan world, you just have animal sacrifices. This is why there's such a big issue in the early Christian movement over animal sacrifice. And you can see that Paul takes a view diametrically opposite to that of the other disciples. The apostolic decree, one of the things in the apostolic decree in Acts is to not to eat anything offered to idols. And this is mostly meat, is what it is. And Paul says, eat anything sold in the meat market without raising questions of conscience. But don't offend those picky vegetarians, or I will never eat meat again unless I cause my brother to stumble. So festival time was a big issue, and that's why the animal sacrifices were a big concern. And for the Jewish Christian Ebionites, this was contamination. This was the teaching of the devil. This was like you were eating at the table of demons if you were eating meat or eating something sacrificed to idols, because essentially all meat is sacrificed to demons. That's the origin of all violence and all meat. Is this whether it's a human or an animal, doesn't matter. You're eating at the table of demons. If you tolerate this, if you do this yourself, or if you even eat at the same table where there's meat.
Wow. Well, Keith, I'm wondering, just a little question here about dominion. A few people in the chat box are asking about the word dominion. How people use dominion, like that humans have dominion over animals, if that was something that was condoned.
Well, this is a tough subject. If you ask me, if you want to know what I think dominion is, I would say, well, let's look at Genesis 1:26. I'm going to define it so that it doesn't mean exploiting animals, that it means, wise stewardship or something like that. But whether that's what the original writers of the scriptures actually intended when whoever it was that wrote down Genesis, that's a different question, and the question is, I don't know. I think you can make a case either way. There is some warrant in the scriptures to say that dominion means, to kick or to subdue or something, some sort of violent. On the other hand, you could say, well, look at Genesis 1:29, just 3 verses later, and he's telling everybody to go vegan, so it can't mean eating them. So you could make a case either way. But then you've got the problem of how to deal with animal sacrifices and all this other stuff, which is clearly in Leviticus and numerous other places throughout the Hebrew scriptures. So it's a problem, and I think that this is sort of the problem I have with Christianity, other than that it's not vegan. The other problem I have with Christianity is interpretation of the scripture. I think you can't tie yourself to the scripture in this way. You have to either at least allow yourself to interpret it, or do as the Jewish Christians said. The Jewish Christians had a very interesting idea. This was heretical both to Judaism and to Christianity, that the scriptures were filled with false texts. These were not things that Moses said. These were saying that Moses handed down the entire law without writing, and then later to some 70 people. And then later someone else, not Moses, wrote it down, and they put in a bunch of other stuff. And you can even see evidence of this in Jeremiah, where Jeremiah says, how can you say we are wise, we have the law of the Lord, when the scribes with their lying pens have turned it into a lie? Jeremiah 8:8, I think. So I just hesitate to get all involved. And as soon as you get distracted into talking about, what does the scripture say, it's like, oh gosh, we've lost it now. I mean, if your heart is open, then you don't need the scripture. If your heart is closed, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Even if it says, Jesus said, verily, verily, go vegan, they still wouldn't follow, because look at the Buddhists. You've got the first precept, which is essentially, not to take the life of not to harm any sentient creature. Do they pay any attention to that? Well, to their credit, some of them do. But the point is that you can't count on Scripture to make your religion for you.
Can I ask another question that people are sharing in the chat box? And then I think we probably want to open it up for questions from everyone.
Sure.
Just that I think Frank had mentioned that that Christians, he's had dialogues with various folks who are Christian, and they mentioned that Jesus ate meat in the Bible. Now, how would you respond to something like that? Is Jesus eating meat in the Bible? Somebody who you shared has been either raised vegetarian or is against animal sacrifice.
Well, there's different ways of handling that. How I personally handle it is just by saying the Bible is a historical document. Of course, they mess it up. What do you think? I mean, do you believe that and all that other stuff too? Do you about stoning people that that sass their parents or something? Or I mean, where are you going to stop? So that's how I would approach it. Now, historically, though, there's only one passage where Jesus unequivocally eats meat, and even there, it's not totally clear. And that's after the resurrection in Luke. And it says that they gave him a piece of fish, and he ate it. That's the only place where it's clear. Although even there, it's not totally clear. Because if you look in the King James Version, which relies on other manuscripts, it says they gave him a piece of fish and a honeycomb. Well, which did he eat, the fish or the honeycomb, or maybe one but not the other? So you can even argue the scripture going on like that. Now, I would say the Jewish Christians, the Ebionites, have the truest representation of early Christianity. Jesus was a Jew. Why should we trust a bunch of these other people who never knew Jesus, who wrote a bunch of gospels that came down like 40, 50 years after he was dead? That goes against all the stuff that was believed in by the people who were his close disciples and who did share his religion. The Jewish Christians, I think, had the best claim to understand Jesus. So you can do that. There's also a couple of other things about the fish business, in that this particular passage seems to be directed against the Marcionites. Marcion was a 2nd century heretic who believed that Jesus never had a body. He didn't have a body even before the resurrection, after the resurrection, never. It was purely spiritual. And this idea, this insertion of this verse into the New Testament is probably an effort to fight this particular idea. But this idea didn't even exist until the 2nd century. So it's probably a very, very late addition. Also, fish are Ixus. It's an acronym. The Greek name for fish is an acronym, which in Greek means Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior. If you put out the initials in those, and in Greek it spells out the word fish, and that's why you see these fish symbols on the back of people's cars and so forth. That's where it's coming from. This was clearly symbolic. It doesn't have anything to do with actual fish, and this is how Christians talked in those days. One of the first Christian tombstones that we have says that faith has given me as my food a gigantic fish which a holy virgin drew from a fountain. This is clearly symbolic. He doesn't mean that he was walking through town one day and there was this virgin standing by a fountain and she pulled out a fish and gave it to him. He says, no, fish is this is a symbol for Jesus. This is a symbol for the gospel message. So when Jesus is distributing the fish, what he's really doing is he's distributing the gospel message, and it's a sort of a multiplication of the message kind of thing, is that, that soon it will be everywhere because we'll all share it with each other.
Wow. Well, thank you for addressing those questions that we had in the chat box. And there's one other, and I think we also will want to open it up and see if anyone would like to speak their question, which you're welcome to do. There was another question about the passage of the loaves and the fishes. Jesus feeding the crowds. Is that the similar
Yes.
thing where it's a symbolic gesture?
Yeah, you could put it that way, that it was a symbolic gesture. Jesus never eats the fish in those cases. And the thing is that this is an example of a story. See, all these people were just telling stories, and sometimes it got written down, and sometimes it didn't. Well, it got written down a whole bunch of times in various other passages in the early church writings. Irenaeus references the same story about the miraculous distribution of food to the 5,000 or the 4,000. Arnobius, and I believe Eusebius does too. It's in Lost Religion of Jesus. But in all these extra biblical recountings of the tale, only bread is talked about. They says, "Don't you remember the time when Jesus distributed the bread to the 5,000 and how many loaves were left afterwards?" In fact, even Jesus himself, when he refers back to this passage in Matthew, he says, he only refers to the bread. So someone inserted fish in the original story, but then forgot to also add it to the passage where Jesus was referring back and says, "Don't you remember that time when I fed the 5,000 with those 2 loaves of bread or 5 loaves of bread?" So I think this is clearly something that's been tampered with. The thing is, I don't think you can really rely. I wouldn't make my spiritual faith a matter of Scripture. I mean, what if they got it wrong? I mean, think about that. I mean, it could happen. I know it's a stretch. Something in writing that's not right. It's not correct. But it happens. It happened in the ancient times. Happens today. All the time. You can't believe everything you see in the newspaper or hear on the radio. Same thing back then.
Well, thank you, Keith.
That's a good reason to not get into arguments about Scripture, I think, because you could get really off the track, especially.
Yeah.
I mean, you know it inside and out, but most of us would have trouble getting past certain things, that could get brought up. So yeah,
and I hate to say this, but this is sort of the problem. This is why it's sort of hard for me to get into to Christianity, where I've been to church, I've done the church thing, but I don't see myself as like taking the message out to the churches anymore, because the churches, if they want the message, I'll talk to them. Like, send them to me. I'll be happy to have a chat with them. But that this is what they're concerned about. It's just a lot of scriptural arguments. You've got to come from the heart sometime. You've got to think about what's happening here.
Right.
So coming back to the heart and back to our group here, I'm noticing that it's almost 6 o'clock, and we may have some folks, because our time was from 5 to 6, or actually whatever time you are in the country, you might be at 7 or 8, but just wanted to acknowledge that. And what we'll do is we'll stay over the time to answer questions, and I'll explain how we'll do that. And if you need to leave, then we're just so excited and happy that you're able to join us for this call tonight. And stay tuned for next month. We're going to have a woman named Renata join us. She's from England, and she is she communicates with people who passed on, and she's very well known for doing this, and has lots of interesting stories to share with us as well about her vegan journey. So we're looking forward to Renata Bertoli, who will join us from England next time. But meanwhile, here we are in the present moment. So what we'll do is I'm going to switch the way the call is going into a Q&A mode. So folks will be able to unmute their phones by pressing *6, or if you're on the computer, you can click on your own mic and you'll be able to unmute yourself to ask Keith a question directly. So in just one moment, you'll hear an announcement.
All attendees are muted and may unmute themselves by pressing *6.
He says, if anyone would like to ask Keith a question directly, feel free to do so by pressing *6 or using the unmuting yourself. You can also press raise hand, and I can call on you that way. So it sounds like maybe we have somebody on the line.
Hello?
Yes, do you have a question? Please share your name with us.
Hi, this is Chris.
Hi, Chris.
I was just saying, why do you think there's so much resistance to veganism in the church?
Mm-hmm.
I think that roughly it's the church has the same problems as the rest of society. They've got a bunch of people in there that already eat meat. How are you going to convince them that they shouldn't be doing this? And the same problem within the church or outside of the church. The church has it a little worse because there's sort of the historical problem that the church has a history of trying to reject vegetarianism, first with Paul, and then later when it became ethical, vegetarianism became sort of a heresy in the Middle Ages. And so you would sometimes have these monks who would be vegetarian, but they would be very careful to say, oh, but we're not out of concern for the animals, because that would be a heretical belief. We're in it for the health or something. But they would be very strict. So it's just roughly the same problem, maybe a little worse within Christianity. And I think that churches have to make a living. And how are you going to get up and preach a sermon on the how it's wrong to eat meat? Well, you could try that, but then how are you going to sustain your congregation after that? Who's going to come to the church and hear you next Sunday, and so forth? So it's sort of a practical problem that I think that it's quite possible that the church might go vegan or vegetarian all at once, but it's sort of hard to get the next person to be vegetarian.
Thanks, Keith, and thanks to Chris for asking your question. Does anyone else have any questions?
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Layton in Springfield, Illinois. I was late to get on, but I've really enjoyed listening to you, Keith, and also the questions. I'm 82 years young. And may I read to you, you mentioned the Christian Vegetarian Association. Today's, once a week it comes, usually Dr. Steve Kaufman, a medical doctor, writes it, but a different one did today. It's pretty short. Would you like me to read it?
Sure.
That'd be wonderful.
It says, I, too, often hear the rationale of animals not having a soul somehow justifying the abuse of animals and the consumption of their flesh. I've given this response some thought, and to be honest, I really don't know whether animals have a soul. I suspect they do, and I expect to see them in heaven. But the important question I think we need to ask ourselves is not, do animals have a soul, but rather, do I have a soul? And if I conclude that I have a soul, why would I ever consider killing and eating one of God's beautiful creatures? We may not want to think of ourselves as better than the rest of God's creatures. We may want to think of ourselves as better than the rest of God's creatures, and if so, why not demonstrate it by compassion? Don't you sometimes wonder if the animals were made in God's image and not us? Dr. James Weiland.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That is beautiful. Definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I'm honored to be part of the group tonight, and I look forward to continuing it.
Oh, thank you so much, and we hope that We are, and really this is about creating community. So we have a place that we can talk and share amongst each other and really explore more about what does it mean to be a spiritual vegan. And thank you so much for sharing that wonderful quote and your feelings as well.
You're most welcome.
Lisa, could you post that on?
Let's see. Now, it was Clayton, is that correct? Did I get your name right?
Leighton, Leighton. I am challenged when it comes to the computer. I know how to receive an email and send one, and that's about it. I would guess that Keith, you'd know better than I.
I'm looking through my email, looking for that. Did it just come today or something?
No, Wednesday, January 13, Wednesday.
January 13.
Okay. I'll look for mine too, because I get that.
Can you, Leighton, can you say the name of the person who wrote the quote? Can you say the name of the person?
Yes. I don't remember him ever writing it. Usually it's Dr. Steve Kaufman, who's an MD.
Okay.
This says Dr. James Weiland. It doesn't indicate whether it's a PhD or MD.
I've got it. Yeah, I've got the newsletter. Let's see if I can.
Okay.
Now, Dr. Kaufman has written some time ago, and I sent an email requesting if he would send me a copy, which he did. And that one had to do with whether or not animals have a soul. And his take on that was that, and I think the word was nephesh, but I'm not certain, that in the older scriptures, older than the ones that we have access to, the word nephesh was applied both to animals and to humans.
Oh, nefesh. Yeah, that is it's a soul. It has, that actually has a reference to a Hebrew word, to a Jewish word that's in the Torah, the nefesh. There's 4 different parts of the soul, and nefesh is one of them. It's kind of like your likes and dislikes, and all creatures have that, whether you're human or not, in that belief system. So,
Thank you for shedding light on it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing.
May I share something else? I changed first 60 years of my life. I ate tons of meat and cheese and eggs, and but I quit all processed and refined foods. But I cut out maybe meat 70%. I still ate some boneless, skinless chicken and some salmon. Then I quit everything, all animal products. But the only reason I started it was for my health, and it's improved my health tremendously. But then somehow, and you could help me on this. Now, when I see a truck, we have near Springfield, Illinois, there's a where they slaughter pigs. And when I see a truck carrying the pigs, and there's openings there, and in the winter it's cold, in the summer it's too hot, and I almost cry. I just, I feel, if that were humans, they feel the same as we do. And when they're in the area of the slaughterhouse, they hear each other making screams in pain, and they feel afraid the same as we would if we were there ourselves as humans.
Leighton, I met somebody that had, this has been a while back, had gone vegan for health reasons, and he told me that within a few months after that, he was watching movies that used to, his wife would cry, but he would think it was silly that she cried, and then he found himself crying at the same movies or kind of movies, and I think it illustrates that by becoming vegan, by making that connection with the animals, we've opened our hearts in a way that a lot of people haven't done yet. And so we feel that, the suffering of others.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Wouldn't people in every religion agree that the same creator that created human beings also created animals?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And would the creator want the animals to suffer? Keith?
Yeah.
Question. This thought has entered my mind that if Jesus were alive today, it's much different. He certainly would not approve of the factory farms where the animals are abused and their lives are shortened, and then they're taken to a slaughterhouse and killed while they're still alive. What would be your thought about that?
Well, I don't think that. I think that Jesus was even in his own day was a vegetarian. So I certainly wouldn't have any problem with that. I think he was. I think he would say that we shouldn't be eating animals at all from the very beginning.
Yeah.
But that's the way. That's the way it was literally in the beginning. So why shouldn't it be that way in Jesus' time and now?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much, Leighton, for asking your questions in such a heartfelt way. We really appreciate it, and we're glad that your heart opened when you became vegan. And that is something that I hear people have a spiritual awakenings when they shift their diet. And many spiritual people around the world do choose to eat vegan because it does help them with their spiritual practices. So let's see. I'm wondering if anybody else have a question? And
I have a comment.
Sure. Please say your name.
Sure. This is Heather Friedley, and I'm in the Chicagoland area. So hello,
thank
Leighton. You. And I just wanted to say that, Leighton, you have such a kind voice, and I appreciate your words on the call. And of course, I cry all the time when I think of and see the suffering of the animals. So we're all with you. It's very hard. And if Jesus were here walking on the earth today, I would hope that he would raise all of the animals up and take them home. So we're with you.
Aw. Thanks for sharing your support. That's so important, and that's really why we have the call, is so we can share these feelings.
Thank you, Keith, for your time as well. I really appreciate hearing your wisdom and experience. So thank you.
You say, Heather, you're in the Chicago area?
Yeah, I'm in the northwest suburbs in Lake in the Hills.
I live in Springfield.
Yeah, I heard that. I don't make it down that way much.
200 miles south. But I want to thank. Is it Ms. Levinson? Is she the one that has got this going?
Well, myself and Judy Carmen, we organize these events together, these online events.
Thank you for doing that.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for joining us. We hope we hope you continue to join us. Thank you. And maybe the two of you will find a way to connect if there's any vegan or vegetarian groups in the area. I don't think we have a vegan spirituality group in the Chicago area, so let me know if anyone would like to start one. I can certainly help you do that. But anyway, meanwhile, just wondering, does anybody else have any other questions? Any questions for Keith? Let's see. Okay, well, I guess that if anyone does have any further questions, what I will do is I'm going to send everyone who participated on the call tonight, everyone who registered for it, I'll send a replay of this event. So you'll get to hear it again and see it again. And also we'll include any of these items that we've been discussing, any resources. So Keith can share resources. We'll look up that poem and see if we can find it online and share it with you. And just so that we can share with you all the information that we discussed tonight. And we won't be able to include the chat box, but certainly we'll put in some links and share with you some other things. And if anybody is interested in starting a local group, just let us know. You can always email us back, and we'll put Keith's contact information. So if you have any further questions, you can address them directly via email.
Yes, I'm not hard to find. CompassionateSpirit.com. I'm there. Send me an email, or get it from Lisa. I'm very glad that you could have me here tonight. And so, yeah, any questions? Just let me know. I'll try to answer them as best you can. And if you're ever in Denver, check us out, denvervegans.org.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Keith. Yeah, and I think Lauren also, she was with us from Santa Fe, and she put the quote in the chat box. So we'll go ahead and we'll make sure we get that quote to you. It was so lovely, and thanks to Leighton for sharing it with us. So Judy, do you have a closing prayer for us this evening?
I do. This is Albert Schweitzer's birthday, I believe, or we're close to it anyway. And he was famous for talking about reverence for life. And he also talked a lot about the circle of compassion, widening the circle of compassion, and that we human beings would never find peace for themselves unless they included animals in their circle of compassion. And so Will and Madeline Tuttle and I sort of got into the whole idea of Circle of Compassion, and our website is circleofcompassion.org. And we have that daily prayer that we say every day at noon or whenever you can. We've got, over 1,000 people now that are praying that prayer, and actually on the website it's translated into many languages. People have been sending in translations of it for several years. So I thought, in honor of Albert Schweitzer, we might just say that prayer. It's very simple. Mm-hmm. And the idea of it really that people, who think of themselves as ethical vegans rather than spiritual vegans, or, feel like they don't like the word prayer, this is a vision as much as it is a prayer. And so anyone can say it, and the idea behind it is to feel the reality of this, the words in this prayer, as you're saying them, and know that on some level of reality, it already is, it already exists, the circle of compassion, because truly everybody in their heart loves animals. They just haven't opened their heart enough to let themselves act on it. So the prayer or vision is very simple and short. So I'm going to say it, and then after I've said it one time, let's all say it together. So Lisa, can we unmute everybody? and have everybody say it out loud? Can we do
Everyone, you can unmute yourself. If you didn't share a question, you can press *6 if you're on the phone, and if you're online, you can just click the little microphone next to your name and unmute yourself. Okay, Judy, I think we're ready.
Okay, so I'll say it once, and then we'll all say it together. Compassion encircles the earth for all beings everywhere. And now together, compassion encircles
the earth for all beings everywhere.
For all beings everywhere.
And so it is.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Judy, for leading that.
Would you give your website, and is the prayer on the website then?
It sure
is.
It's circleofcompassion.org. Lisa, can you type it on there? I guess I
will. I will type it, and also we'll send it in an email to everyone. But I know that Leighton mentioned he doesn't use a computer too often, so it's circleofcompassion.org.
Right.
I do check my email every day, and thank you, Keith. I receive your email. Thank you. I look forward to reading it.
Wonderful.
So we love hearing from all of you.
Yes,
so glad
yes,
you
we did. Thank you so very much. And we'll just extend our hearts to each and every one of you as a way of saying thank you, and also a way of saying I hope you have a wonderful evening, and that you continue to bring awareness, to raise awareness about veganism just by being exactly who you are in your daily lives. So thank you so much for joining us, and special thanks to Keith for being our guest, and Judy, a wonderful co-host. And so we'll go ahead and sign off, and just many blessings to all of you. I hope you have a wonderful month, and we'll be back the next month on the second Thursday of every month, and our next guest will be Renata Bertoli. So we'll send you more info on that too. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Good night, all.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.